11:30. There it is, 11:30. So we've been on Facebook. Good morning, everybody. This is the first workshop of the Socialist Party's National Organizing Conference, Mutual Aid, Building Communities through Mutual Aid. And we have some great panelists today. My name is Greg Pason, National Secretary of the Socialist Party, and I'm really honored to be here today. The United States has a long history of solidarity economics and mutual aid. Most of these projects have come about because of necessity, oppression, and marginalization. But as we try to survive in what's called late stage capitalism, communities are developing alternative economic structures to address human needs that are not served by the current economic or political systems or powers and really can't be. In his essay collection, Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution, Peter Kropotkin argued that cooperation, not competition, was the driving mechanism behind evolution, even though capitalism encourages the opposite. Maybe this counter-evolutionary economic system we live in put us in the situation we live in today, you think? The mutual aid slogan, solidarity, not charity, does not only address the need for grassroots groups over established NGOs, it challenges the hierarchical system of charity, where people with privilege and power use their wealth to distribute goods and services, which should be basic rights. But with a catch, we have to follow their rules, meet their standards, and understand you are the client and they are the provider. In many cases, the individuals and organizations that are causing the crisis are the ones funding the programs that provide basic needs not met by their own actions. Developers provide basic services to the populations they displace. Corporations and individuals funding programs, usually under their own names, providing services in conditions brought about by their greed and exploitation. Not all charities are like this, but the system of charity can be and usually is dehumanizing and demoralizing to those who rely on it. The mutual aid model is horizontal. We need each other. We support each other. We're in this together. Some historical mutual aid programs in this country, and going back to the 1600s and 1700s, the Free African Society of Philadelphia, the early Afro-Cuban Municipal Aid Society, the Martí Maceo Society in Tampa, which brought together white and black Cuban workers during Jim Crow. The early 1900s saw networks amongst Hispanic miners, the Black Panthers survival programs in the 60s, Common Ground Collective in New Orleans after Katrina, Sandy recovery programs in the Northeast, and ongoing organizations like Food Not Bombs, and so many others. Things have been bad, but as the popular mutual aid video, and some of you saw it, says, shit's totally fucked. What can we do? Now mutual aid groups have to address overlapping crises. COVID, mass unemployment, the rise of the far right, increased militarization of police, while the government is feeding racial divisions and scapegoatings. As socialists, communists, anarchists, radicals, whatever we call ourselves, mutual aid work is putting our ideas into practice. It is also a way for regular community members to build solidarity with others in our communities and hopefully build alternative institutions to those that exist today. Today we have a few folks I really respect. Some I just met, some I've known for many, many years on this webinar, and each will speak about a project that they are working on and situations in their areas. We have folks representing Central Oregon, Washington State, Montclair, and Newark, New Jersey, as well as New Orleans. And we have Char, Anthony, Kyle, Kat, and Sean, who will be introduced as they speak. I'll start with Char. Char is somebody I work with in Montclair Mutual Aid, and Char will tell you about Montclair Mutual Aid. They are a lifelong member of Montclair and an artist. And Char, it's all yours.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name's Char. I use they, them pronouns. I have to admit that when Greg asked me to be involved in this, I was kind of surprised just because I'm very new to this kind of work. I think I've only been involved in our mutual aid group for 6 months or maybe even a shorter amount of time than that. I just want to say thank you to everyone, and not to be over the top, but I really do feel honored to present to everyone and to be speaking with this amazing group of other speakers, many of whom have been doing this work for a long time before me. So I'm really excited to learn from you all today. So yes, like, thanks for letting me speak here. So yeah, I'm in no way an expert on mutual aid. This is more of a beginner's perspective of what I've learned so far, stuff that I would not only tell other people who are just getting started doing mutual aid or want to start a mutual aid initiative in their area, but the things that I'm reminding myself of to think of going forward as well. So I was just going to talk about what I've gleaned so far and also talk about what our group, Montclair Mutual Aid, has been doing and what we plan on doing in the future. So I just want to start, I guess, by giving a picture of the community that I'm from and where our group is based, Montclair, New Jersey, which is a township in Essex County, North Jersey. About 40,000 people live here. I think people with the most wealth who are kind of in power here want to present Montclair as like this upper middle class liberal oasis. And I think that it's actually that assertion that leads to the erasure of people who are dealing with things like food insecurity, poverty, gentrification, structural racism, which are issues that people face daily here. So our group was formed sort of back in March, sort of in the midst of COVID-19, just to address, you know, how can we change material conditions here for people. So some of the things that we have done have included like distributing toiletries and groceries in collaboration with the group Montclair Moms of Color, distributing food to homebound families and seniors with the local food ministry, Tony's Kitchen. We do community gardening and harvesting for food sharing. We did a book sharing event where we distributed books and magazines, air conditioner distribution, school supply sharing drive. We're currently in the planning stages of starting a community fridge in the 4th Ward of Montclair that has been in food apartheid without an accessible grocery store for 5 years. So I think one thing that I'll share that I've learned from being involved in the mutual aid group and meeting people around the community through it is that there are people in the community that have been doing work that is mutual aid here for years. It's just not under the name mutual aid necessarily. And sometimes is that work is not stuff you're immediately going to be aware of if you're not part of specific network or different sections of the place that you live in. Because, you know, it could be everything from more formal organizing groups to just, you know, more informal networks of support and relationships form in neighborhoods, for example, to give and receive different kinds of resources. So I'm lucky because when I came into our group, we already had connections to those sort of networks through members of our group that have deep roots here in our community. You know, I've lived in Montclair since I was an infant, but there are people involved in our group who are older than me, whose families have lived here for several generations back. And that gives a different kind of perspective and has helped us kind of set a foundation and make those connections. So I think trying to connect with people who have been doing mutual aid work, maybe under different names, and really going and trying to find that if it's not something you're immediately aware of, and join forces and pool resources rather than kind of divide, you know, build something together rather than build something on top of what was already there. That's something that's very important if you're trying to like start a new mutual aid initiative. Also in our group, we've had a lot of like internal discussions based around what mutual aid is, which sprung up from a discussion about the use of, I don't know if you guys can see this. Here's our pin, our logo. So it sprung up from a discussion designed by the amazing Phoenix Herring, who's a member of our group who couldn't be here today, but it rocks. So that sort of sprung up from the discussion of, you know, solidarity, not charity, which is on our logo here. So some people felt that had an issue with that inclusion on our logo as a messaging thing, like that we shouldn't put that phrase on our logo, that it was somehow like extreme or negative. And other people felt that was like an ideological conversation, that solidarity, not charity, is like an age-old slogan that explains like the ethos of mutual aid in general. And that if we can't say it, then are we doing mutual aid? So that sort of spiraled into a conversation about what mutual aid is and like the differences between solidarity and charity. And what kind of other organizations do we want to work for? What does each look like? So I feel like something that I learned from that experience was like coming forth with like accessible education and like knowledge sharing about mutual aid at the fore. Dean Spade's explanation of solidarity versus charity is one good resource that helped me, because I didn't know like the nitty gritty differences. I guess when I joined this group, I had just heard of mutual aid groups in other areas and really admired the work that they were doing and wanted to be involved in it. So I think knowledge sharing and reading and being clear about those differences is important. But that being said, our group has worked and collaborated with charities and nonprofits. But I think you need to be specific about how you do that, at least in my experience and in the experience of our group. Even though mutual aid is by nature an alternative to the charity model and, is perhaps critical of the nonprofit model, we have worked with entities that are charities or nonprofits, but again, it's a matter of being particular. We work with Tony's Kitchen, which is a food ministry out of a local church here in town that serves meals and delivers groceries to people. And their work falls under the umbrella of charity, but they don't turn people away based on things like immigration status, how much money they make. They're not collecting that kind of information and not allowing people to get food and resources. So that's something that's really important about the work that we do with them, that their work is not, I guess, like discriminatory or like regulated in that certain way. One thing that we've also tried to do with them is we became aware that there were certain parts of town that weren't getting reached by their services. So we created flyers and posted them in that part of town in English and Spanish. And then we started getting some food deliveries in that part of town. So I think that work has been working. So I think depending on how a certain charity operates, sometimes it can be like an important way to collaborate with them. So we also work with Northeast Earth Coalition, which is a nonprofit, but again, they're really involved in sustainable food gardening and food justice and addressing food insecurity all around northern New Jersey. But they have several community gardens here in town that, local families have plots there, and we help maintain and harvest the vegetables in those gardens, and also in the more public gardens here in town. And that a lot of that food is donated to Tony's or directly to people. I guess the last thing that I wanted to speak about was sustainability and like the sustainability of the mutual aid group. I think mutual aid is really having kind of like a moment right now, and that could be really great. But I think it's important to be adaptable and create networks so the group and the work is sustainable, and mutual aid can, sort of like, this is like a movement and not just reduced to like a trend, because people have been doing this work and needing this work far before COVID-19 and will need it throughout and afterwards. So, mutual aid affects people's lives, so it's important that the group be sustainable. And I think when thinking about how much you can put into a group, if you're a beginner and you're trying to either start a group or join a group that already exists, just being honest about your time and ability, don't overcommit, and then end up, putting somebody else out, and vice versa too. If you have more time, energy, resources to give, just doing, I guess, a personal accounting. Of course, life happens. And even though in the short time our group has been around, we've seen people come and go, be active, be less active. People have, their work schedules change. So somebody else has to pick up their food deliveries. I think actually, like, for tasks that need to be done, like deliveries, volunteer shifts for the community fridge, which we're developing, just having like a list of a backup. So if something happens, like an emergency or just like a conflict, somebody gets hurt, somebody needs to take care of somebody that day, etc., you just have a backup to call during those times, because people need those resources. I guess that's all I've got. Thank you guys for listening to what I had to say. I really appreciate it. So next, I am really pleased to be introducing Anthony Diaz. So Anthony is a Newark native and the oldest of 4 brothers. He currently is the North Jersey organizer for Faith in New Jersey and a co-founder of the Newark Water Coalition. He has been actively involved in activism since high school and believes that people power and the recognition of how all struggles are interconnected are the keys to winning this war on the people. So without further ado, here's Anthony.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Anthony Diaz, and I'm the co-founder of the Newark Water Coalition. So as our title states, we deal mainly with water security and water access. So Newark is going through a crisis similar to Flint. Our lead levels are very high, and as a result, we started this grassroots community organization to educate and motivate and empower the local community to go against the narrative of the city's administration that everything's fine with the water, there's nothing to see here, there's no problems. So, and that's manifested in different events and different things over the last 2 years that we've been organizing on this issue. So during COVID, we've had very big issues because we ourselves as an organization couldn't get access to water because there was a lot of limitations and restrictions on the amounts that you can purchase. So imagine being the leader of the Newark Water Coalition and not being able to distribute clean water to your community. It was very frustrating. It was very infuriating. But again, a lot of us are leftists on this call. So it's like, this just really shows how capitalism really has a lot of limits here. And what we had were, we had such a deep network, that once I put the call out there, we had so many people come in and offer and make water donations to us so we can, give these back out to the communities. And so a part of this network was the mutual aid network of, I guess, of New Jersey that put a lot of organizers and activists together. And, we were able to help each other. And that's really how we started off doing no contact deliveries of water to different homes in the city of Newark. Now, because we've been doing this work for such a long time and that people knew us and we had this platform, out of the George Floyd protests came a lot of community members that wanted to do an action. They wanted to do a protest. And as a result, we had a mutual aid march. We tapped into different organizations across New Jersey, and we really were like, hey, we want to do something different. So as one of the lead strategists for the Newark Water Coalition, we came up with this parade route. It was, significant. We were marching from a high school to a police precinct in a community in Newark that doesn't traditionally get the same kind of recognition as like the downtown area or, the different parts of Newark. And this was all, intentional. This was all on purpose. I wanted to do something different, right? Everybody's out here marching. Everybody's out here protesting. Everyone is starting these, mutual aid groups. So how do we do something different? How do we show up to, in this community in a real positive way? And so that's why I came up with this idea of the mutual aid march. As we're marching, we're giving out stuff and resources and supplies to a very, very affected area in Newark. It's the South Ward. It's one of the areas of Newark that I grew up in. You know, demographically, it's a lot of crime. Definitely Black and brown folks live in that area. And again, it's an area typically ignored. Now, the other side of it, politically, this is the area or the power base of our current mayor. And again, you know, the Newark Water Coalition has been doing a lot of things that kind of speak against the narrative of, hey, everything is all good here. So when we did this protest, the people who pushed back the most was the city of Newark. I am an adamant believer that mutual aid is the biggest fuck you to the state, right? Communities showing up for communities, preaching self-sustainability, showing in ways that we can circumvent this, you know, having to pay for everything type of system. And you're building power, right? When you help someone else, when you feel a need for someone else and you do it consistently and you show up continually, it means so much. You know, Char touched on how like making these connections with different organizations and how like you have to be intentional and make sure like you're not falling into that same NGO and nonprofit status, because we know they come into these communities with a silver platter, and then once those resources are gone, boom, you don't hear from them again. But you know, a lot of these grassroots mutual aid networks literally starts as neighbors helping neighbors, right? And again, it's all about us being intentional with how we're organizing our communities, why we're organizing our communities, and how we really, really, really can show up for one another. So clearly the city of Newark was not a fan of this. The mayor of Newark was not a fan of this, literally sent paid agitators to disrupt this mutual aid march of people literally having lettuce in their hands, diapers in their hands. They're being roughed up by paid city officials, not even the police. The police were there, they were just watching, you know, really not getting involved because they knew, you know, the city officials that were attacking us. And so, you know, for me, it was definitely a kind of come to Jesus moment, because I'm like, wow, out of everyone that is, you know, fighting against us, I never thought paid city officials would be the ones to really stop us. But again, when you look at it, when you look at the kind of work that we're trying to accomplish here, you start to understand why they push back so heavy. It's not just that it was in the South Ward of Newark. It's not just that I'm going against Ras Baraka and his administration. It's because we're really, you know, we're doing work that's really, really important nowadays. You know, the world has literally shown us this year how, or no, I should say this country has literally shown us what it thinks of its most vulnerable populations, right? And so mutual aid is a way to combat all of that. And I'm not gonna say it's been easy, and I'm not gonna say it's been all sunshine and rainbows and, you know, we're all holding hands and singing songs. This work is hard and it's tough. And if you're doing it in a correct manner, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna have problems, and you're gonna have people that are trying to beat your ass for literally handing out diapers and groceries. But all of that is to say, this work brings about hope. This work brings about change, right? If you're doing this work correctly, you can make a profound difference. And what I realized that day, the day of the mutual aid march, and having, you know, all these issues come up, was like, wow, we must have power here. We must have, you know, we must be building something here that's radical and different and a threat to the status quo. And, you know, I guess I'll end by saying this, you know, there's always this talk, especially these days, about the new normal, right? Oh, we gotta accept the new normal. We have to understand what the new normal. But if we, right, as organizers, as activists, as people who just have a good heart and intention on doing some kind of work, we can be the ones that decide what that new normal is. And honestly, we have to. We don't have a choice to sit on the sidelines anymore. And like I said, it's going to be tough, but this is definitely a fight we're fighting. Thank you.
Yeah, we're all on mute. We're applauding. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was inspiring. And let's continue this move across the country. And I'm going to connect two comrades. And First, I'm going to start with Sean White out in New Orleans. Sean's going to give us an update on what's going on in the Southeast, New Orleans, Mississippi right now, specifically since it seems like there's a hurricane every week, and his work post-Katrina that he wants to talk about. Sean White, I've known for a very long time. I'm so old I forget when I met people. Was it the 90s? Was it the thousands? Was it the 80s? No, it could have been the 80s, Sean. Sean, I've known from IWW's General Defense Committee, Food Not Bombs. I think I've been at least 2 Food Not Bombs with Sean. Sean is babysitting my son. He's crashed at my house. He's just a really good guy. We do miss him in Jersey, but I know he's made a new home in New Orleans. Sean White.
Okay, hi everybody. It's Sean White. Currently living in New Orleans, been here about 15 years. Actually moved down here from New Jersey. Actually came down after Hurricane Katrina, 9 days after, with actually the help of Socialist Party. They gave me a grant to come down here and do some mutual aid relief work. And that was through a group called Common Ground. It started out very small. It was just 4 people in a room. I came along later, but it grew into one of the biggest mutual aid projects in recent years. Basically, it was founded by 2 members of the local community, Malik, Raheem, and Sharon. They basically put a call out for assistance in their neighborhoods, basically for protection against white vigilantes. From there, it grew to encompass several different facets. Sorry, my dog started freaking out. So originally it was for community defense, but then we realized part of that, from a mutual aid standpoint, meant security through health, through housing, through legal support. And so it grew into a large mutual aid network involving those things, branched out into starting 3 mutual aid health clinics, free health clinics, a legal support team to help people fight evictions, other kind of legal processes that was coming along from the state, and eventually branched out into environmental remediation, planting wetlands, stuff like that. And through that, several other groups came about. Eventually, the Common Ground Collective branched off into an actual NGO. It's helping rebuild houses and still doing the wetland stuff. But from that, the mutual aid that currently exists, we still have the bike shop up and running, which basically refurbishes and fixes up old bikes to give to the community. We still have the free health clinics that is again mutual aid based, and actually involves a lot more. Again, so there's a lot of transplants coming in and working with local communities to see what the needs were, and eventually, when the transplants move on, this idea of mutual aid definitely took root, which is one way that mutual aid kind of grows into a community. It can become systemic. It can come from outside agitators. It can come from a mix of outside agitators and community, but it's really about the community seeing the value of it, embracing it. Currently, like fast forward to today, we do have 11 community fridges that are regularly stocked from community gardens, from food taken and repurposed for the community, from NGOs. We also, have a mutual aid space, which is kind of runs in parallel with a mutual aid Facebook group. Both of them, one is obviously virtual. The other is an actual brick and mortar space where goods, services, information can all be shared. The sharing of information is very important as well on a non electronic source. It's important just because it's person to person. That's one thing that mutual aid's it's very important about mutual aid is that it be face to face in a lot of cases, because that's how you build a community. It's nice to have something like Facebook that can let you know what resources are available, but it's more about the actual interaction of like person to person interaction of like, I'm not here to gain anything off of you. I'm here to just see my community survive and be uplifted. And it's kind of one of the beautiful things about mutual aid is it's community building. If I feel like cooking up a big batch, okay, it's New Orleans, so we like cooking a lot. One of the things I've seen a lot on the Facebook page is I'm cooking up a whole mess of food. If you or somebody you know needs some food, I'm gonna have good food. I'm not gonna have the Red Cross food, you know. So it's gonna be, and just invite people. It's like have a little chat on the porch, grab some food to go with for your family. Things like that are really important. Let's see. We also have several mutual tables in the neighborhood where everything from like people who are making a whole lot of homemade masks, distribute those on the free tables. Seeds, plant starts, been a lot of that going around. A lot of that's my friend Ron Brody. He actually runs several community gardens in the neighborhood. So he's been a big part of mutual aid down here. As far as currently with storms, one of the groups is actually under his base, but it's loosely formed after Common Ground, is the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Matter, and they're the group that I was working with past couple of weeks doing relief work for the current storms, both Hurricane Laura that was hit southwest Louisiana and southeast Texas pretty bad, and then shoot, I don't remember the name that hit St. Pete. St. Pete damaged a lot of the larger, like more well-known like vacation spots and a lot of rural areas. So like most of the reports I'm getting back right now are from places like Pensacola. Actually, I have some friends out in Pensacola who are doing some mucking and gutting out there right now. But it's just time. It's mutual aid is not always about sharing goods. It's about sharing information, and it's about sharing time. It's about just caring about your fellow person and most of your community. Yeah, so that's about it. I think I'm handing this off to Kat from Tacoma now.
Kyle, well, let's let Kyle jump in real quick. I don't want to jump over you, Kyle, since we were talking about, and Kat, you're on the West Coast, so we're going across. Kyle, you want to give us a brief update on the fires in Oregon and also some of the mutual aid work there? And then I'd ask you afterwards to introduce Kat, if you're okay with that.
Okay, yeah, I'm Kyle Fitzgerald. Here in Central Oregon, in Bend, Oregon. So we're kind of currently surrounded by fires, but luckily the last couple of days, the smoke has cleared out, and we've been getting some rain, which is nice. It always helps. Yeah, so the fires started a few weeks ago, kind of in a big way, and Antifa starting all the fires. No, just kidding. Actually, all the anti-fascists here have actually done a lot of really good work in the Black Lives Matter movement. Have came together, and actually yesterday, in the next town over, they did a huge donation drive, and they just got a truck full of all sorts of donations and supplies, and delivered it to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation, which is the closest reservation near here. And they've been not only dealing with fires, which almost happens annually in that area, but also water shortages. They had their water supply system fail a few months back, and they've been battling that, and then COVID on top of that, and then the fires. So they've been hit with really hard times at the moment, and COVID really put a dampener on them because, unfortunately, these communities, their biggest income is through casinos, and because of COVID, they had to close the casino, and so there's really no income in that area for them. But yeah, I've been doing really good work to get them supplies. I just heard a story last night in Oregon that the wildland firefighters actually kind of bailed on this town, and the townspeople got together and built fire lines, and they just got all their construction equipment together and started making their own fire lines, and kind of diverted the fire away from their town. And I thought that was a wonderful display of some mutual aid and kind of mutual service to help each other out. As far as personally, it's kind of weird to follow up a couple heavy hitters over there for mutual aid, but right when COVID hit, they had to close the kind of local food bank, family kitchen thing. So there's a lot of the houseless people on the street weren't able to get food for a little while there because of COVID. So the comrades here, we put together some food packs as much as we could. I made masks. I pretty much taught myself how to use the sewing machine I got from my mom years ago. And we made masks to hand out to people. I did as much as I could. And then we also made hand sanitizer out of Everclear and aloe vera. And then it was hard to get the little bottles to bottle it and hand it out. So we had to scrounge up whatever we could from stores and whatnot. But we made it work. Yeah, so I think I'll hand it off to Kat. And Kat, I had seen on a webinar I did a while back about mutual aid and stuff. And I thought she did a great presentation. She's in Tacoma with Food Not Bombs and other things like that. So I'll hand it over to Kat.
Hey everyone, I'm Kat, and like Kyle said, I'm with Food Not Bombs Tacoma, and work with a bunch of other amazing comrades just doing mutual aid work. We started up in, I'd say like February, so we definitely, as like a typical Food Not Bombs, we kind of started having a plan of like, serving hot meals or fresh meals at least at like a specific location, and that changed a lot when COVID sort of rolled into the United States and like specifically into Washington too. So we had to do a lot of like adjusting initially when we started thinking about how we're going to actually distribute supplies to people. But I think it actually worked out for the better because we're mobile now. So part of what we do every week is we put together hygiene packs, menstrual packs, and like lunch bags. And then we also do hot meals sometimes, although it's been like really hot here, so we haven't done that for a little bit. But we're actually mobile now, so we're able to bring food to people rather than asking them to come to us, which I think has really helped us when it comes to building community, but also reaching a lot more people. So at this point, well, I'll start with how we started. So it started with 3 of us, and we started just by making like 40 PBJs and put them in lunch bags with water and whatever hand sanitizer we could find, which was extremely scarce when we first started. But yeah, just like a few things like that. And we started with 40 bags and just drove around Tacoma trying to find people who, you know, are in some of the unhoused camps that are around town. And we ended up meeting a lot of people that we actually still work with today. Although our numbers have grown a lot, we serve about 200 people every Sunday and then about 80 people every Wednesday. And again, that surrounds kind of like food, but also hygiene supplies, hand sanitizer when we can get it or make it, clothing, menstrual packs, and we've also been trying to do a lot of like tents and tarps and of course extra water and masks as well. Last week we gave out a bunch of like smoke masks because it was the fires made the air quality pretty bad around where we were. But yeah, so we work with about 5 or 6 camps around town, and we just check in with folks. We've also been providing some medical care as we're able to do it because we've got a couple of medics on our team, which has been a great way to make sure that people are staying safe and healthy during these times, because our city is pretty hostile to unhoused folks. We've seen a series of sweeps throughout the years that has gotten kind of like increasingly worse. And the police presence around a lot of these camps has been like extremely violent and just volatile in general. So a part of what we do is also, you know, wanting to provide resources for people and ensure that they're staying safe and that we can bear witness to what cops are doing to them. But yeah, yeah. I kind of want to echo also what something I heard Cher saying of like people do mutual aid a lot of the times without really going under that name. Like people, we do mutual aid for our friends and our families all the time without really calling it that. So why not do those same things to the people in our communities who we don't know yet, but who are an equally valuable part of, you know, what our society is. So I really liked what you had to say about that, Char. But yeah, I really echo that. I think that that's part of why I've been so passionate about this project and why I know a lot of other people on the Food Not Bombs Tacoma crew have been so passionate about this project, is that we see community building as a way to work around capitalism and a way to work around this system that we're in, and actually survive and eventually thrive with the people that are around us instead of just, you know, trying to get by all the time. So yeah, I think like thinking about, you know, for starting mutual aid projects, what some of my suggestions are, I feel like really every situation is so unique. And I think one of the most important things is actually talking to the people that you're going to be bringing supplies to and working with, because ultimately everybody's an expert in their own environment. And so, you know, what you might think people need, they might not need. So I think having conversations and actually building community versus taking on what some people would consider to be like a charity role of assuming what people need. So yeah, and with that, I will pass it back to Greg.
Unmute. Thank you so much, Kat. All right. Okay, folks, if you have questions, please post them in the chat. If not, maybe we'll do like a little fishbowl here while we're getting questions. I know Abe had a question before or maybe we could talk about Abe's question. One of the things that has come up in our mutual aid group and in others in the past has been decision making. And when we're talking about mutual aid, I can't think it's kind of important. I know we've been in these groups before where there's a specific leader type and kind of that person inspires everybody, but also kind of controls things. And we've really been working to try to make sure, I should not be pinned. Sorry about that. I'll unpin you. There we go. Sorry about that. How do we actually make this a dynamic democratic organization that's inviting to people, so they know that once they join, they actually are part of the decision making? Sometimes folks step in and they naturally just kind of step back saying, "Oh, you guys are the pros. I'm not going to give you any input," and that kind of makes it stagnant. You know, we kind of think of the same projects. So any ideas? Abe, if you want to speak, I could unmute you and just send something in the chat. But maybe we could start with that. Folks could all unmute themselves on the panel. Okay, Abe, I'm gonna let Abe talk. How about that? Is that a good thing, Char? I can't do that. Abe, I'm gonna put you to panelist real quick. You're on the panel real quick, Abe. There you go. Unmute yourself. You can ask the question. Abe is part of our Montclair mutual aid group and also was very supportive when we had our when Sean came down and spoke about common ground in New Orleans.
Yeah, I was just wondering about, especially with my question was about the Common Ground Collective, but it could be applied to all the groups here. Especially with Common Ground moving from a grassroots group to more of a NGO. I wonder at this point, what kind of participatory monitoring and evaluation or direct decision making does the larger community have in the work? Like how much do you input or how much direct decision making does the larger community have? And how would everyone describe their kind of decision making and structural way of running their groups?
All right, so that's kind of I don't know if Sean, if you are still involved specifically, but maybe that's a broader question that all of us could answer about what I was saying about how we make our decisions and how we include the community. Sean, you want to start?
Yeah, as again, when I was involved with Common Ground Collective, it was still a collective. It is no longer a collective. It is now renamed Common Ground Relief. Straight across the board, there is no collective. As far as I understand, it is your typical NGO that is top down, not at all horizontal. So again, that's just my understanding. I am no longer a part of it, so I can't really speak to that.
All right, folks want to talk about in your organizations or organizations you've worked with. Abe, I'm going to move you back to attendee. You were in the spotlight for a second. There we go. Anybody want to talk about organizations you've been in? I know Sean and I have been in a bunch of Food Not Bombs and other groups, some of which have worked really well, some of which were specifically separated from the community, kind of came in and disappeared. Folks want to chime in? Kat, you want to talk about Tacoma?
I can chime in with that. So I know for us, we try to operate, super, just vertically. Part of what we do after we do all of our distributions is we all get together and kind of talk about how the distribution went, how the week of, gathering supplies, reaching out to the community, just like kind of how everything went. So we have sort of just a general check-in, and that seems to be where a lot of our decision making happens. And we have a facilitator, everybody's able to speak their piece. So I would definitely say like there's no one person that makes decisions in the collective. It's really like all of us coming together. I mean, I kind of think of like that anarchist stereotype of like we have to like discuss everything. But I think there's a lot of benefits with that of, you know, just like everybody gets to say their piece, and, you know, we all come from, I think, somewhat different perspectives too. So I think there's a lot of value in just being able to really sit down and discuss everything. And then of course, signal chats going every day too, which can be a lot sometimes, but you know, we love our comrades. So yeah, everything's like super vertical. We just discuss everything, and that seems to be where all the best ideas come from, is when we just put all of our heads together.
Other folks want to chime in? Anthony, how is, or Char, you want to talk about our incredible decision-making process?
I can
Yeah.
comment. I was thinking about it because, I mean, it really depends on your group dynamic, right? Everybody has personalities. Everybody's different. Everybody comes from, you know, different backgrounds. So it's not all fucking, like, I want to reiterate this. It's never all peaches and rainbows, because I definitely can be that leader type that's like, look, let's just fucking work. I don't have time for this conversation. This is a dumb conversation. Let's keep it moving. But there are times where I'm like, you know, we have to sit down and we have to talk about this, because this is, you know, this is an important conversation to have. And then you have people who want to be more involved in certain aspects and not the other aspects. Some people don't like logistical stuff. Some people love the, you know, the Instagram photo op opportunity. So it really, to me, it comes down to your basic, like, how do you guys function as people with each other? And I would say the other, you know, the other layer to that is like, we have to understand we're in a pandemic, and there is no right way to, there's no book on organizing in America in the 21st century under a pandemic, right? There is no book for that. There is no theory. We can try, we're just all people trying to do the best that we can, and trying to come at things from that framework makes things a little bit easier. But honestly, it's tough, right? It's just really, really tough. So I would say, look at your personalities, look at the type of work that you're doing, and look at like your long-term goals and your visions for the organization. Like, to me, once you have, or coming from a baseline of those things, then it's easier to move as an organization, collective, or just a group of people, because you can always come back. Does this align with our mission? Does this align with our core values? If not, then why are we talking about this kind of thing?
Char, you want to chime in?
Yeah, sure. So I think in our group, well, we initially decided, you know, because we are newer, we initially sort of decided, as far as I entered the group, to do like consensus decision making. But kind of in these conversations that we've been having recently, we're kind of realizing, oh, are we all on the same page about what that means? So we've considered doing some kind of training for that, or just, you know, like hunkering down with our group and like getting into the nitty gritty of like what it means to come to consensus, how to do a vote properly, how to properly record that in meeting agendas, etc. Yeah, so that is, you know, because, you know, you don't want the internal sort of functionings of the group, even though that's important, you don't want to take it away from the major mission of what your group is trying to do, which is, you know, go be in the community and working with people there, even though, you know, the community is the group to a certain extent, like, and we do need to have these conversations to move forward. I guess it's just what I'm finding at this point, because like we're very much in the middle of this discussion still in our group, is like finding that balance between, you know, having your internal processes on point so things kind of run smoothly, and then, you know, not getting into these, like, I don't want to say infighting because it's not a fight, but in like these internal conversations that take away maybe from the actual work that needs to be done.
I think following up with what Char said and all the groups that I've been in, I think we have like this twisted version of democracy, quote unquote, in this country, even, where not everybody actually has input. So we're moving to that point, but we also sometimes, I come from like the punk rock anarchist community, and consensus doesn't always mean discussing the same thing 40 and 50 times. It means bringing out a concept and seeing if everybody consents to it, right? Even if you were like, I'm not 100% on board in this, but you guys can do it. I'm not like opposing it. I just don't know I can be involved. And we've kind of, in our current group, I think we're kind of working that out. I think that's really important. And as Char said, I think this crisis has brought together so many different people. And I don't know, for the older guy that's involved in the anarchist community, it's so incredible for me to be talking to mutual aid with the normies. You know what I'm saying? The like folks I normally wouldn't talk about mutual aid with. I'm like, whoa, this is not ABC No Rio. This is not Food Not Bombs. We're actually talking about these concepts in the community, and people are understanding it. And you're seeing it come up even, organically. People are developing these things. And as I said, we have a long history. When I brought up the Cuban model mutual aid society, and I learned in Tampa, these guys, a lot of these guys were mostly guys were wrapping cigars, and what they would do is they would get piecemeal pay, and what they would do is they would take their pay, share it with one person whose job that day was to read radical material to them while they're working, right? They pooled their incomes. And that person wasn't working in the cigar industry, but he was educating, right? And it was mostly, again, it was he at that time. And correct me if there were others in the cigar industry, but those sort of models existed. But I think those sort of models existed in a vacuum where it's a specific crisis. We'll get through this. Now I think we're looking at something longer term. Environmentally, Sean, I don't see how every 3 weeks you get hit with a hurricane out there. There's another one that's going to Texas. Kyle, the fires, I'm sure, I know a lot of it's connected to like meth labs and stuff out there, but I mean, like, it's dry, and like weather is changing, and we're gonna have to deal with this stuff. And seriously, anybody, I think why more people get involved is they see in the news like, oh my God, even my illusion of democracy isn't working. And even, the more mainstream liberal types seeing you're not a normie, sure. Seeing the cops, questioning what the cops actually do and what their role is. It's not to serve and protect, it's to oppress and enforce specifically discriminatory laws. So I've seen this pretty awesome, it being pretty awesome, but it's also like we're out of our safe area because I'm used to talking to folks that kind of get the lingo, and you got to reintroduce the lingo or listen to the same lingo that was used in other communities in a different way and learn that lingo. So, I think we're going through that as far as figuring out how to on process as well. And I think we're trying to get away from just being super internalized on process and getting back to our projects as well, if I can put in my 2 cents. Anybody else want to talk on that? Kyle, you didn't get to speak.
Yeah, I'll say something. Kind of to talk about what you just mentioned is understanding people where they're at, and definitely people that are on the side that are doing the mutual aid have different needs and abilities, different lingo. They might not know who the specials are, but doesn't mean they can't do good work. But also the trauma that is usually afflicting the people that are in the houseless population. It's good to understand the people that you're trying to help, at least try to understand them, and understand where they're at a mental capacity, and also understand that, like, if you're helping the houseless population, some of them don't. They want help, and obviously they need to eat and have shelter and stuff, but some of them don't want to try to conform into society's norms. And I don't blame them. If you could get away with not applying to the capitalist system, like, more power to you. So it's good to understand where they're at, and understand the psychology of these people, and why, people use substance and abuse drugs and stuff. And it's not because they're bad or they got addicted to some substance. It's usually because they have some kind of trauma behind it. So they're trying to overcome the problems in their past. So it's good to know your audience, and also don't play hero. No one needs to be saved. They just need some help, and really only if they ask for it. And you can't force a sandwich down someone's throat if they don't want it. So, yeah. Over.
All right.
I kind of want to echo what you said earlier, Greg, about how like doing mutual aid projects and like being a part of a mutual aid collective is really bringing theory into practice. And so kind of also with like kind of bringing new people into the fold of who might not be super familiar with like what anarchist practices or what socialist practices or, any of that, like being able to show them like a culture of mutual aid and like a culture of like what revolution can look like outside of, like burning things down, which is like also awesome. And I love it. And we need more than that. You know what I mean? So I think this is like a really good opportunity to like show the culture of like what we can bring to the table as revolutionaries. Also, I want to say, I think I accidentally said that we organize vertically and we organize horizontally. So sorry.
I figured that out. Hopefully everybody got that. I'm going to go to one of the other questions in the comment box, and we have some time. Anybody want to talk about, I know Abe just posted a link about medics and medical type units or projects that are kind of similar to Food Not Bombs, and how is that done, if anybody knows, during the pandemic? I saw some in Portland, some were attacked by police. Do folks know anything about that in your community, or have you used it or been involved? Anyone?
Yeah, I can share a little bit about that. I'm not a medic and that hasn't been an experience of mine, but one of our comrades in Food Not Bombs Tacoma has a lot of medic experience, and they're like really well versed in that. And so they're trying to train other people in our collective to do that kind of work. Because every time we do distributions on Sunday, they come out with their medic pack, and they've, done, helped a lot of people with, like infections and like just cleaning wounds and giving people supplies to do that for themselves throughout the week before they're able to see them next. So that's really all I can say about it, just because it's not something I've done, but it has been a really valuable aspect of what our collective is able to offer people when we go out. Just because, yeah, a lot of the hospitals, and I don't think this is a Tacoma or Washington phenomenon. I think this is across the country. Like, hospitals are really not helpful to a lot of unhoused folks, like specifically because they're not able to pay for treatment. So yeah, I guess just, it's awesome. It's super helpful to have, and looking forward to getting trained on that.
All right, Sean raised his hand. Okay, Sean.
Okay. Yeah, just answering that question again. I'm not a medic. I've done some basic medic training, but the best way I've found to actually get in touch or get involved in that world is just go up to a medic at a protest, start talking to them, let them know that you're interested, and exchange information so you can, just person to person. I don't think that there's really much of a way online as far as like looking into something like that. I've never tried, but just person to person, just go to a protest, see a medic, and try to make a connection that way is a good way to actually get involved.
As I said, Abe posted a link. There's a YouTube link. I can't open it now, on medics and mutual aid. It's in the conversation. Also posted something about an organization in Chicago. So maybe maybe we have actually more time than I thought we would. Maybe some other projects to you folks, and I hope you guys can hang around for another 25 minutes, 20 minutes. If you can't, just send me a note and I understand. There are some other projects specifically connected to mutual aid, and I was wondering if your organizations or you specifically have been connected to it. Prison and jail solidarity specifically, through personal experience. I've known folks who are in during COVID, and getting information out of prisons and jails have been really impossible. Prison writing campaigns or communicating with prisons. I'm lucky to be in their Socialist Party office. We have there's a group called RAP, which works with aging prisoners who are trying to get out of prison, and that's been rewarding work, although it can be demoralizing. It's just so much work. Has anybody done that work recently, or have any good contacts, you know, other than, you know, books through bars and other things? Do you folks have any connection in that work? Anybody want to speak on that?
There's a group, I think it's based out of Newark, called All of Us or None. And we've been trying to link up with them, or I've tried to link them up with an organization to give them mask and hand sanitizer so they can deliver it into the prisons. What I found, especially trying to do like some of the like just regular prison work, is like you really had to have been doing that prior to COVID to tap into anything in it now. And which sucks, because you're like, damn, this is a population I want to reach. But if you didn't have those connections before, you really have to look at a group that had ins, know somebody's, or just like were on a list. You know, I was talking to a clergy person and said it took him over 2 years to get the rights to be able to go into the facility. And I was just like, damn. But we have done a little bit of that. We've given out water to a lot of groups, but it was definitely, you know, tough to try to get that into like Northern, which is a jail over here in Newark, and they need it. Like, that's all I can really say, is they really, really need it.
Anyone else want to chime in? No. I would just say, out of, you know, personal experience doing work with detainees back, oh my God, it's like 15 years now. It's a lot of work. You know, it's it's a lot of, I used to get a lot of collect phone calls. It's almost like you know, we used to go and talk to, we'd go into the waiting room in the Hudson County Jail, which is closer to Newark probably than Essex County Jail, right on the other side in South Kearney, and sit in the waiting room and just talk to some of the families, and they would connect us to other detainees that were in there. And then we would just set up visits. And like the first thing we'd have to do is, because, you know, it's so, folks are so used to some of these nonprofits reaching out, you'd have to say, you know, I'm not a nonprofit, I'm just someone here to help. And if you need somebody to reach out to, please tell me. But it is rewarding, and new connections are made, and new links to communities are made. So I would encourage, if folks are interested, it's a lot of work, but there are some incredible organizations, and maybe as I package this video later, I'll put some links at the end. Okay, so maybe going back to our projects, and people can talk about projects right now, and something that Kyle brought up about, you know, how we talk to people, the houseless population specifically, and Kat, you probably work with this. I know I did that. Even in Jersey City at Journal Square, Food Not Bombs, coming in and just speaking as an equal and sharing food instead of distributing food, like some of the churches do. That's really rewarding work. So folks, what project right now are you excited about? Hint, hint, Char, I want to talk about the fridge. But what projects that are you excited about? New projects, something you haven't done before, something that you might encourage other folks to get involved in? Anybody want to chime in on that?
I mean, I'll share something that we've kind of been working on. It's not really necessarily a new project, but it's just a new way to organize, just because we've been really kind of trying to hold ourselves accountable to making sure we're being COVID safe, and, you know, taking as many precautions as we're able to in the type of work we do. I think when you're working with, you know, any large number of people, there's always going to be a risk, but we want to make sure that we're keeping us safe, and more importantly, the people that we work with safe. So we've started, rather than like bringing a lot of new people in to maybe help make hygiene packs or menstrual packs. We've started organizing that outside of our headquarters that we use, and kind of using that again as a way to like bring new people in who want to contribute labor-wise. So just this last week, me and I think like 3 or 4 other people put together like 200 hygiene packs, so it'll be like 2 weeks worth of supplies. And then I think like 80 or 100 menstrual packs, which will be again like 2 or 3 weeks of supplies. So that's been really helpful, I think, just like in keeping COVID in mind, but also making sure that we're continuing to like engage the community who, you know, has time and labor to offer to us.
Char, you want to talk about the fridge?
Yeah. So right now, our group is trying to start a community fridge. You know, when I spoke at the beginning, I think, you know, even though community fridges have existed across the country for a long time now, I think, you know, when I was saying that mutual aid is kind of having a moment, I mean, as are many different kinds of activism right now, the community fridge thing seems to have really, really taken off at the moment. I feel like every day there's another one popping up somewhere. And, you know, since I've been talking to people about the community fridge, people like send me the information on Instagram and everything. And I just see all these fridges. But anyway, we wanted to start a community fridge, and we wanted to start specifically in the 4th Ward of Montclair, which is predominantly, like the most predominantly Black and brown ward in our town. And we wanted to, since Pathmark closed in 2015 at Lackawanna Plaza, they have been, that part of town has been in food apartheid. There's no walkable grocery store in that area. Whereas, you know, Upper Montclair, which is, you know, like a richer part of town, has two grocery stores, like like a block away from each other, basically, or a few blocks away from each other. So anyway, we wanted to start a community fridge in the 4th Ward for those reasons. And that project has been, like, figuring out the logistics of that project have been really interesting. A resource that's been really helpful to us is called Freege. I don't know if they're a nonprofit or what they are, but they're an organization that kind of connects a network of community fridges throughout the country. And we've actually, we've had a representative from their group come to our meeting and talk about his experience with community fridges, and talk about liability, they have like a lot of really great resources that includes like by state food laws for food sharing, basically. So like basically how not to get your operation shut down by the police if you're distributing food. And yeah, so we're still trying to find a host. That's been the most difficult part of this process. But we have a couple of options. We have acquired a fridge, we've acquired volunteers, we have the Food Connect. So really all we need right now is we have like a funder that will pay for the electricity. Now we just need a place to put it, but we have a few people who are wanting to do that. But I think that's definitely been the most difficult part. You know, even when we have found people who are willing to do it, they're not in a place that's really accessible or a high traffic area. So it's just figuring out where's the best place to put it, especially in a more suburban community, but like Montclair. A lot of places are just residential and don't get a lot of people going. So finding a host has been the most difficult part of that project, but it's been really exciting. And I hope that it comes to fruition in like the next month or so. So yeah.
I think that organization is Freege, and the person who spoke was pretty awesome, and their project was very grassroots. So I'd encourage folks to look for that. I see some folks are picking up their kids. Sean, you got a message here from Mike Dixon, who's in in Southern Mississippi says he wants to reach out to you. Why don't we give, I'll give everybody an opportunity if you want to say some last words, just kind of anything inspiring or, I don't know, something nice, read a poem, say a joke before I close it out. Char, you just spoke. So Kat, since you went last, you want to go first? Unmute.
My bad. I guess I'll say an Asada Shakir quote, without theory, there's no practice, and without practice, there's no theory. So I'm so honored to have been able to speak with all of you guys today and just like hear more about these projects. Definitely want to stay in contact with all of you and just, you know, keep hearing more. So yeah, love it.
Sean, you want to say goodbye? I don't see you enough, Sean.
Yeah, yeah, just everybody out there, keep doing the good work. Keep getting out there, talking to your neighbors, see what they need, let them know if you need something, and build those communities.
Anthony, you want to say something?
Sure thing. No matter what's going on, no matter who's elected, who's in office, who's not in office, the same thing happens. Organize. That's all that matters. Organize today, organize tomorrow, organize for the future.
All right. Char, you just spoke. You have any final words?
I mean, just thank you to everyone who is here. Keep doing solidarity, not charity. I will too. That's it.
All right, Kyle. Last words for us from Bend.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me on. Don't be afraid to work with other organizations, one that aren't, you know, they might not be socialists or whatever, but if they're helping people, then that's all that really matters. And don't leave out the kids. If you have young kids that want to help, put them to work. Thanks.
We're advocating child labor here. Just kidding. A friend of mine, Victoria Law, wrote an incredible book called "Don't Leave Your Friends Behind," and it's definitely a book I would encourage folks to read, specifically how to include caregivers and parents and children in your movements. It's so important we include everyone. And I will post all these links from the organizations when I tighten up this video. And thank you for everybody hanging in there for almost 90 minutes. I give some final words and a little plug for the SP. For the comrades that are in the Socialist Party here, thank you for attending. Everybody else and folks on Facebook or folks that will see this when we post it on our page and in other places, probably starting next week. It's really important for me. I've learned to, you know, you have to be an advocate for people that you aren't, you know, advocate for communities that are being targeted. You have to be an activist. You know, you got to be out there doing the work, and you got to be an organizer, because without organizing, we don't bring, our goal is to bring the power to communities, and without organizing, they won't get that power. So you can't just be an activist and an advocate like many are. It seems you have to be an organizer. And let me read from an inspiring quote from our principals in the Socialist Party, something that drew me to this organization, from our principles, say democratic revolution from below. No oppressed group has ever been liberated except by its own organized efforts to overthrow its oppressors. A society based on radical democracy with power exercised through people's organizations requires a socialist transformation from below. People organizations cannot be created by legislation, nor can they spring into being only on the eve of revolution. They grow in the course of popular struggles, especially of those of women, labor, and minority groups. The Socialist Party, which I belong to, works to build these organizations democratically. The process of struggle profoundly shapes the ends achieved. Our tactics in the struggle for radical democratic change reflect our ultimate goal of a society founded on principles of egalitarianism, non-exploitive and non-violent revolutions among all people and between all peoples. To be free, we must create new patterns for our lives and live in new ways in the midst of a society that does not understand and is often hostile to new, better modes of life. Our aim is the creation of a new social order, a society in which the commanding value is the infinite preciousness of every woman, man, and child in person. So that's my organization. You guys are, I'm going to post links to all your organizations. It's so great to see everybody here. New friends like Kat, I'll be in touch with you, and Anthony and Sean, old time friends and folks I work with every day. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you to everybody who came. So you can now eat breakfast if you haven't eaten breakfast, or get to work. For SP members on here, we have a panel on Hubert Harrison coming up at 1:30. You can email me at natsec@socialistpartyusa.org if you need that link, or if you registered, you should have got the link automatically. It's also on our virtual national office, our national organizing page. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day. And it was good seeing you here. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.